At the height of the Cold War, the United States and Soviet Union together operated more than 50,000 military aircraft. The 2026 United States Air Force operates 5,217. Now imagine those two realities in the same sky. Here is the scenario. The 2026 USAF fights a sequential gauntlet against every major Cold War air power at their peak. Wave by wave, what is expended in Phase 1 is gone in Phase 2. The sky has a budget. The forces. The Soviet Air Forces at their 1980 apex, approximately 10,000 combat aircraft. The Chinese PLAAF in 1969, over 4,000 aircraft including MiG-17S, MiG-19S, and early MiG-21S. The combined Warsaw Pact air forces of East Germany, Poland, Czechoslovakia, and Hungary, roughly 3,500 additional aircraft. The 2026 USAF, 5,217 aircraft total, approximately 1,800 combat-coded fighters and bombers, 186 B-2 and B-21 stealth bombers, around 450 F-22 Raptors, no nuclear weapons, no resupply. Each historical force fights with its era's technology and doctrine. The question is not whether the USAF wins. The question is what it costs, and whether the magazine runs out before the enemy does. Phase 1. The Warsaw Pact Air Forces. East Germany, Poland, Czechoslovakia, Hungary. Peak Cold War, approximately 1978. Combined strength, approximately 3,500 combat aircraft, MiG-21s, MiG-23s, Su-7s, Su-17. The Warsaw Pact Air Forces were not independent commands. They existed as extensions of Soviet doctrine, forward deployed, trained for offensive support of a ground advance, and equipped almost entirely with Soviet hardware. Combined, approximately 3,500 combat aircraft, MiG-21 fishbeds nimble and lethal at close range, MiG-23 floggers with limited beyond visual range missile capability, Su-17 fitters carrying precision munitions the West spent years trying to characterize correctly. The technology gap here is the largest in this scenario. An F-22 Raptor cruises supersonically without afterburner, carries AIM-120 AMRAAMs accurate beyond 100 miles, and has a radar cross-section roughly the size of a marble. A MiG-21 pilot cannot detect an F-22, cannot outrun one, and cannot engage before the missile has already arrived. But here is what the Warsaw Pact understood, that raw numbers obscure. Mass creates its own targeting problem. Imagine the Battle of Britain. 2,600 Luftwaffe sorties in a single day against British defenses in 1940. Now transpose that logic. 3,500 aircraft launching coordinated strikes from multiple vectors simultaneously, some at low altitude below radar coverage. An F-22 can track 30 targets simultaneously and carries 8 air-to-air missiles. When the 8th missile leaves the rail, the pilot becomes a single-engine aircraft in a contested sky. On day 3, a formation of 40 Polish MiG-21s flies at 200 feet across flat terrain to avoid AWACS coverage and closes to within 12 miles of a USAF forward operating base before detection. They do not penetrate the perimeter, but 2 F-16s scrambled to intercept are hit by infrared-guided atoll missiles from the trailing formation. Both pilots eject. The missiles work because they do not need radar, they need heat. The Warsaw Pact Air Forces are destroyed over 8 days. Estimated losses: 2,800 to 3,200 aircraft, approximately 4,000 aircrew killed. USAF losses: 4 aircraft, 2 pilots recovered, 0 killed. The USAF has now expended an estimated 340 to 400 air-to-air missiles. Phase 2 begins with a thinner magazine. Phase 2, the Chinese People's Liberation Army Air Force, PLAAF, 1969, approximately 4,000 combat aircraft, MiG-17S, MiG-19S, MiG-21S, 2-4 bombers. The PLAAF in 1969 was a Soviet inheritance, partially dismantled by the Sino-Soviet split of 1960 and further disrupted by the Cultural Revolution, which purged experienced officers and halted training cycles for years. Its nominal strength of 4,000 aircraft concealed a force where perhaps 60% of pilots had fewer than 100 flight hours per year, a threshold at which combat effectiveness drops sharply. The MiG-17 was the aircraft that surprised American aviators over North Vietnam. In 1967, F-105 Thunder Chiefs, supersonic strike aircraft, were being downed by subsonic MiG-17S in close-range engagements. Not because the MiG-17 was superior, because American pilots were undertrained for the knife fight the MiG-17 forced on them. The 2026 USAF does not have that doctrinal gap, but it has a different problem. A thinning missile inventory and 4,000 aircraft that need killing regardless of pilot quality. But here is what the PLAAF missed. Training is not replaceable with numbers. Pilots with fewer than 100 flight hours cannot execute low-level penetration tactics. They fly predictable profiles. They break formation under pressure. 3 PLAAF regiment-size formations, approximately 90 aircraft each, attempt coordinated strikes on day 2 and lose cohesion within 40 minutes of contact. 1 2-4 bomber, a reverse-engineered B-29, the same aircraft type that delivered the first American atomic bombs, closes to within 60 miles of a USAF logistics hub before an F-15C intercepts it. The crew of 11 had been flying for 6 hours. They knew they were not coming back. They flew straight and level anyway. PLAAF losses: 3,100 to 3,600 aircraft over 12 days. USAF losses: 9 aircraft, 3 killed. Air-to-air missile inventory now below 40% of original capacity. The USAF wins Phase 2. It is beginning to feel the weight of winning. Phase 3, the Soviet Air Forces, VVS and PVO Streny 1980, approximately 10,000 combat aircraft, MiG-25s, Su-27s prototypes, Tu-95s, Tu-22Ms. This is not the same problem as the first 2 phases. The Soviet Air Forces at their 1980 peak were the only Cold War air arm built from the assumption that it would face exactly what the USAF represents. Soviet pilots flew more hours than any Warsaw Pact counterpart. The MiG-25 Foxbat was designed for one mission: intercept American strategic bombers at Mach 2.8. It was not a dogfighter. It was a missile platform with an engine attached. The PVO Streny, the Soviet Air Defense Forces, a separate command from the Offensive Air Army, operated 10,000 surface-to-air missile batteries, 5,000 radar installations, and dedicated interceptor regiments. This is not a collection of aircraft, it is a system, and the USAF enters it with fewer than 1,100 air-to-air missiles remaining and 13 aircraft already lost. Imagine the air campaign over North Vietnam, the most heavily defended airspace in history at the time, where American aircraft flew into an integrated SAM and interceptor network and took losses that forced a complete rethink of air war doctrine. Now scale that network to a force 20 times larger, with more advanced radar and 30 more years of refinement. B-2 and B-21 stealth bombers can penetrate Soviet radar at altitude, but stealth is not invisibility. The Soviet Tall King radar, operating on metric wavelengths that stealth geometry handles less effectively, gets intermittent contact on 2 B-2s over the Fulda corridor. 2 SA-5 Gammon missiles are launched. 1 detonates close enough to down the aircraft. The crew does not survive. But here is what the Soviet air defense system missed. It was designed to stop a threat from one direction. The USAF does not fly Cold War ingress routes. B-21s approach from the Arctic below Soviet early warning coverage. F-22 suppress PVO interceptor bases with AGM-88 HARM missiles before MiG-25s can scramble in sufficient numbers. The system was superb. It was built for a specific threat. The 2026 USAF is not that threat. Over 21 days, the Soviet Air Forces attrited to below operational effectiveness. Estimated losses: 6,500 to 8,000 aircraft, 9,000 to 12,000 aircrew killed or missing. USAF losses: 38 additional aircraft. Total campaign losses now stand at 51 aircraft, 14 personnel killed. Air-to-air missiles, effectively 0. The USAF wins. It wins the last engagements with weapons that the Wright brothers would have recognized. Final verdict? Phase 1. The Warsaw Pact Air Forces destroyed in 8 days. 4 aircraft lost, 0 killed, and 400 missiles gone. Phase 2. The PLAAF fell in 12 days. 9 aircraft lost, 3 killed, and the missile inventory below half. Phase 3. The Soviet Air Force took 21 days and cost 38 more aircraft, 14 more lives, and every remaining air-to-air missile. The last engagements were won with cannon fire. Total USAF losses: 51 aircraft, 17 personnel killed. Total Cold War losses: between 12,400 and 14,800 aircraft, between 14,000 and 18,000 aircrew dead. The kill ratio is almost beyond calculation, somewhere between 240 and 290 enemy aircraft destroyed for every one USAF aircraft lost. And yet, here is what this scenario actually delivers. And it is not the conclusion most people expect. The 2026 USAF won every engagement. It ran out of missiles before it ran out of enemies. The final phase of the most lopsided air campaign in this scenario was decided not by stealth, not by AESA radar, not by 5th generation avionics, but by how many rounds fit in an M61 Vulcan cannon. Technological dominance is not infinite. It is a quantity. Every AIM-120 that kills a MiG-21 is an AIM-120 that cannot kill a MiG-25. The USAF in 2026 is the most capable air force in human history. And against the sequential gauntlet of Cold War opponents, it won by a margin thin enough to fit inside a cannon barrel. The lesson is not that the USAF is vulnerable. The lesson is that quantity, even outclassed quantity, imposes a tax. And taxes compound. That is not a comfort, that is a warning.